I would like to offer an overview, a general approach to understanding the path of spiritual awakening and enlightenment, which is a fancy word for the simple, ordinary recognition of the essential nature and reality of ourself, this present awareness that's aware of these words now. So to begin with, we consider this awareness that we are, or this consciousness that we are. And I use the word awareness and the word consciousness synonymously, for they refer directly to the same experience. We consider this awareness, this consciousness, to be personal, located within or dependent upon the body and mind of the human organism or of an incorporeal soul, an individuated unit of energy or life force. So this is the premise from which we usually live. And the reason we live from this premise of being a separate, limited entity is because we believe ourselves to be such. We may not consider that such a way of living is arising from a belief because it is so deeply ingrained in our psychosomatic system, within our body-mind system, that we take it for granted that we are a separate, limited entity. We've forgotten that it's a choice that we made to believe ourselves to be separate and limited. For in fact, if we check or investigate the present evidence of our experience, we don't find any evidence to support the belief that we are a separate, limited entity. There is no separation or limitation to ourself, this awareness or consciousness. The idea of being separate and limited is an acquisition that was conditioned into our body-mind system through our upbringing and development as we embody the human we perhaps now believe ourselves to be exclusively limited to. So the path of spirituality in its truest expression, that is the expression which is directly coming from the ultimate absolute truth, or a search for that ultimate absolute truth, is a deconstruction of all beliefs we have about ourselves. For the truth to be the truth on an absolute level is for the truth to be experientially self-evident without the need for information to be added, without any belief to be added. We do not need to believe in ourselves' nature in order to experience ourselves' intrinsic nature. So the path of spirituality and the path expounded here, what's transmitted here, is the invitation to let go of all beliefs, not through effort or discipline to eradicate the beliefs, like we would try to destroy something. Rather, we just see clearly in our direct experience that these beliefs about ourselves being limited and separate are not founded in our experience. They are founded in hallucination or mental fabrication. If we look at what our present experience says silently, it is evident that prior to every thought or conceptualization about ourself, such as being separate or limited, there are no such concepts intrinsically present in our experience of ourself, in awareness's own awareness of itself. It is aware of itself. We are aware of ourself, but we do not have any thought process intrinsic to that awareness. Every thought process arises subsequent to the already here presence of awareness of ourself. So in this way, we see clearly that our self-awareness is independent of thought. It is not limited to thought. It is that presence which precedes the arising of every thought and witnesses the appearance of the thought, the duration of the thought, and the disappearance of the thought. So in this way, we establish that awareness, purely aware of itself, unmixed with any thought or perception, is our essential nature. Awareness is our primary experience. The thoughts that come and go are secondary. And the first thought that arises, which denotes in our English language the presence of ourself, is I, or I am. So to say I, or to say I am, is a true statement. I am, or awareness is true. For if we look at what this statement refers to, it in fact refers to that which precedes thought. If I say I'm referring to that from which that thought arose. If I say awareness is, I'm referring to that presence which is aware of the arising of the thought, which says awareness is. So these statements are absolute truths, for they do not refer to temporary conceptual knowledge that is relative to other knowledge. It refers rather directly to the absolute presence of awareness, which transcends thought, is independent of thought. So the problem of psychological suffering that arises in our human condition is due to identifying this I, or awareness that we are, exclusively with a particular object of our experience, like a concept about ourself, or a bodily sensation, or the perception of the body, or the concept of a limited soul. The moment that we identify ourselves exclusively with some kind of limited object, we lose access to the intrinsic nature of awareness, which is free of all concepts and all objective qualities. Objective qualities are described only in terms of thought within the domain of mind. But being that awareness is prior to the mind, prior to the arising of every thought, in its own experience of itself, it has no objective qualities evident there. It has no limitations evident there. It is unlimited, non-objective. So in its intrinsic experience of itself, it is what we refer to as happiness, completeness, wholeness, contentment, fulfillment, for it is absolutely full, with no possibility of lacking anything, for it is unlimited. This may seem far-fetched to many of us who have believed for so long that we are separate, limited people, and that the cosmos is this vast, virtually infinite space in which we tiny people exist temporarily. So when we hear that the awareness that's aware of these words now is in fact unlimited, this statement doesn't jive with the mind's belief about ourself. So it can seem far-fetched that ourself is really infinite. But if we look simply and investigate the nature of this awareness that we are, we do not find any limits there. We do not find any objective qualities, such as a size, a shape, a duration, a color, a dimension. It is utterly free and independent of all objective qualities and concepts. So as we have identified ourselves exclusively with an objective quality or concept, and down the road created for ourselves psychological suffering in the domain of the mind, we can easily investigate this identification and see if really, in our experience, we are identified exclusively with a particular object. And notice again that any identification is a process of thinking that requires time, a beginning and an end. Whereas the awareness that we are is the presence that precedes the arising of all mind activity, including identification. Prior to the thought that says, I am identified with the body, I am the body, I am the mind, I am this concept, there is this silent presence of awareness, which is simply aware of itself as it essentially is, devoid of any conceptualization of itself, any objectivization. It is simply present, not knowing any limits to itself. So in this way, we inquire into the nature of ourself, and we undermine the belief that ourself is identified with some kind of object or concept, because we see that we are independent of every object or concept. We are that which is aware of every object or concept. We are independent. So in one fell swoop, we can undermine the entire mind, because every thought that arises is a representation of what the mind activity is, an appearance that has a duration and eventually disappears. And within that appearance is a conceptualization of an object. And in this case, the conceptualization that seems to cause psychological suffering is the one that identifies ourself exclusively with an objective quality, the body or the mind. So if we see clearly that every thought that arises is not capable of defining ourselves, not capable of limiting ourselves, for we are that independent presence of awareness that is aware of the thought, then we are immediately free of every thought. We understand clearly that we are free of every thought. Any thought that arises can only describe the activity of thought. It cannot describe awareness itself. Even these words here that are uttered are pointers to awareness. They do not encapsulate awareness or define awareness. The word awareness appears within awareness, appears within the experiential medium of awareness, the space of awareness. So it doesn't contain awareness, define awareness, or even limit awareness or condition awareness. Just as an object in space, like the movement of these hands, does not in any way encapsulate the space, condition the space, affect the space, or limit the space. So now we see that every thought that arises not only appears to awareness, that awareness is independent of the thought, but that the very medium in which the thought arises is awareness. Every thought arises within awareness. And likewise, every sensation of the body arises within awareness. And every perception of the so-called cosmos arises within awareness. So not only is awareness independent and free of the appearances or the phenomena in our experience, awareness is utterly intimate with them. It is the very medium or space in which they arise. Awareness being unlimited, not finding any limits in itself. Experientially, it is edgeless and borderless. It is the only medium or space-like presence in which the entire manifestation can exist. So now we see that the very awareness that we are is the essential substratum of existence, that it is the only medium in which everything that exists. So awareness is utterly free of psychological suffering, utterly free of the mind, and yet is the medium in which the mind arises, and is therefore the creator of the mind. And the mind comes from awareness. Awareness or consciousness is the only presence that is present, the only substance that is present to give rise to the mind. The mind does not come from outside of awareness. There is no outside of awareness. There is no outside or edge to this presence that awareness is. So now seeing that there is only awareness appearing within itself as thoughts, sensations, and perceptions, as the mind, body, and world, the very substance of the mind, body, and world can be recognized directly as awareness itself. So awareness, our true self, our true reality, is the very substance of the mind, the body, and the cosmos. And this is the final understanding. This is what is referred to as enlightenment or moksha. It is the understanding of the essential substance, the irreducible presence that all existence is made of. And that substance is ourself. This very awareness, aware of these words now. There is no deeper we can go than this. There is no higher we can go than this. For it is the recognition of the dimensionless, depthless, omnipresent, eternal reality of all existence. And the we that cannot go further, deeper, higher is this very infinite reality itself. And yet, from this recognition, our human expression continues to arise and continues to change and evolve in time. So the way that this recognition impacts the body and mind is never ending. And the way that this body and mind expresses this understanding through the world and interactions is also never ending. And that is the transition from learning through suffering to learning through joy and love. Previously, we learned to begin to inquire into the true nature of ourself by receiving psychological suffering inside, the sense that something is wrong. So we begin to question, what is wrong? Who is it that is wrong? How is this sense of wrongness coming into being? And eventually we come to the spiritual path. We discover that the I that has the problem, that is wrong or is suffering, is a mistaken identity that we've believed ourselves to be. And finally, we recognize that we are not limited by that thought or belief. We are this unlimited presence of being, whose nature is intrinsically complete, whole, fulfilled, and as such is happiness itself. So from here we learn, we evolve, we grow on the human level of our expression from the perspective of this happiness, which bubbles up into joy, ecstasy, bliss, love, a sense of beauty, wisdom, and guides the flow of our experience unceasingly, unless we, by choice, overlook again our true nature and believe temporarily we are a separate limited entity. And if such a belief reoccurs through a relapse into ignorance, then we will seem to suffer psychologically. But soon the understanding of our true nature will simply shine through that mistaken belief and reveal again the eternal truth of our infinite being.